If I can, if you allow me to.
Thanks. Okay, so we'll open up the meeting. This is the Thursday, March 7, 2019 meeting of the Zoning Bylaw Review Advisory Committee. First order of business is to ask if anybody's recording the meeting. It does not appear that anybody has notified us of that being the case. We do obviously have LakeCAM recording. Our first order of business on the agenda is to review and vote to approve meeting minutes for December 6, 2018. We have been provided copies of those meeting minutes for review. Does anybody have any discussion or changes or suggestions relative to this document?
I don't think so. I read them too. I'd make a motion to approve.
Second it.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. It's unanimous.
Yeah, I'm just gonna move over here so I can see
Okay.
everybody. Sorry.
The second thing we have on here, so first of all, let me say, generally speaking, that I asked Nate to put together a list here, and we're really focusing on a few things. Some of these came up through conversation in our last meeting. Some of them are issues that Nate has been dealing with that he'd like to see some conversation or discussion relative to putting forward some changes to. But this ideally is a group of issues that I want to discuss and put forward an idea as to whether we want to bring them forward to the June town meeting for a potential change. If we determine that we don't, that's okay too. But I think generally speaking, this is kind of lining them up for that purpose. And again, the timeline may be tight for that. So if I think we're on the same page with certain items and we think we can get consensus on certain items, or at least get them to a polished state where we can present them, there may be some pushback on some of these things. That's okay too. It's up for the town meeting voters to decide whether they want these changes or not us. It's really up to us to try to shape those concepts for presentation. So if we feel that we've done that to a point where they're clear and they're lucid and we're comfortable with that language, then I think we move forward. If we don't, then we can put them off to the fall town meeting. So that's kind of the general overview of this. So the first thing we have is the section 8.7 temporary licenses. So Nate has handed out some information on that. Do you want to kind of give us the 20,000 foot view of that?
Yeah, I'll do the temporary license one. So we've had issues in the past, where you have a house fire, you have something happen. American Mobile Homes, for example, it can pull in a mobile home in the next day. They really can't put it there because the license is done by the Board of Selectmen. What I would like to see is in areas where the Board of Selectmen is spelled out in that piece, just a change to the building commissioner. I typically review them anyway.
Yeah, I think that makes
In
sense.
the Board of Selectmen say, Nate, is it placed in the appropriate place? Has the Board of Health taken a look at it? With those findings, the Board of Selectmen issued the permit. So this is, for the delivery of services to the town from a perspective of, unintentionally destroyed houses and making sure they get in a place expeditiously.
So the only change is to change it from the Board of Selectmen to the,
Building
within your
commissioner.
purview.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was it. And
That makes a lot of
I
sense.
figured, maybe while we were doing it, we'd mirror other language in our bylaw when it's called out being destroyed. So instead of putting destroyed by fire or other natural holocaust, we just put unintentionally destroyed, as we've done elsewhere in the bylaw.
So if somebody intentionally
Destroys it. Well,
can't have a mobile home while
so there is
Well, I think you
actually
mean just
provisions.
demolish it
Yeah,
to build
that-
a new.
Yeah. And there are provisions, if it's a buildable lot, then you can put it there.
Yeah.
So that's part of that permit
Right.
as well.
But I think the big idea with this is that it shouldn't be coming to the Board of Selectmen for that, because we rely on the building commissioner to really determine whether it should be there anyway. We're just rubber
Well,
stamping his
plus
decision.
in this event, time is of the essence.
And exactly, and that's the other
Wait for a
piece of it,
board
is a
to-
lot of times we've tried to have meetings fast, or we'll try to, accommodate as much as possible, but still, you don't wanna, if it's a couple days, especially in the winter, you
Oh, that's
just don't
huge.
wanna do it. You wanna have the ability to issue that permit as soon as possible, so.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
All right, so this is kind of an obvious one. I guess I'll move that we approve this for purposes of sending it forward to, how do we normally do this? All the,
To the planning board.
Before you do that, Aaron, 8.7.3, this is the storage. Are you gonna do each one separately or just all of it together?
all of it together.
Because those, remember the storage pods?
Yeah, that's
We have a
another
couple of residents.
one that can be handled by the
I think
But
so.
I mean, it
department.
says, we've gotta change, because right now we're charging them $25 a year. And like
Yeah,
Pete
that's,
said,
that's in the fee schedule though, not in the bylaw. So the bylaw doesn't call out a fee. The building, I can.
You want
pres-
them renewed annually?
I think so. Yeah, that way if there's ever an issue, we decline to
Yeah, I don't think we want to change any of this other than the license granting authority.
Yeah, and
It
I,
makes it very clean and simple.
I can present to the Board of Selectmen, because the Board of Selectmen authorized the building department fee schedule. So I can create a line item for a fee schedule for this
Yeah.
pending,
Yeah,
town
make
meeting
that
vote.
$500.
Yeah.
Really?
The insurance pays it.
Oh, push it. No, I'm talking about the storage trailers,
Yeah, right.
right?
Well,
Incentivize people to use the storage
build a-
facility here in Lakeville.
there you go. Economic development.
Exactly.
I mean, we don't really want people to permanently put
No,
those
no,
there.
I don't think
And-
so. I don't think they belong in a residential area unless you're moving or you have a specific situation or
Yeah.
you have a large parcel of land.
Or you
you-
just don't get caught, because there's a lot
Or
of them
that.
out there.
How about next to chicken coops? Like 80 feet from the lake?
Do you feel you could deny them if you think that they're looking for something permanent?
I think so. Yeah, I think
Would
so.
like you to be able to, yeah.
Well, he could, but would he is the other
Yeah.
question.
Yeah,
I am a
well,
pretty
So are we
nice
just
guy.
talking about
Pretty
residentially
lenient.
zoned land, or like if you had a commercial property and you wanted to use one for storage
Yeah.
almost permanently, would that be? a
I think
doable
that,
thing,
I
or-
think that you would have, we don't have a provision to separate residential and business, so if it was a business facility, they'd have to follow this same
Yeah,
process.
which I think is fine,
Yeah.
but
And if they had to pay $25 a year or
Yeah.
$50 a year on a commercial
That's short-
facility to have one,
short
then I
money.
don't think anybody would worry about
I
that.
got you.
All right, so I have a motion, and that's to bring this forward for the sake of it being considered for the town meeting warrant in June.
Second.
And I guess within that means that this, it's whatever that process is, Rita, is the same with all of these. So we're gonna send a copy of this to the planning board so they can hold a hearing. We're gonna communicate this to all the other boards that, all of this stuff for people to know what's happening.
Yeah, typically, we send it to the Board of Selectmen, and then if they want to put it on the warrant, we'll forward it to the planning board to hold a hearing.
Yeah, whatever the process is,
Okay.
yes, exactly. Yeah, I jumped that step, but,
Just, yeah.
all right, so that's the motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye,
Aye.
aye.
That's all four of those, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Bob did. All right, so the next one is to discuss the idea of a residential solar bylaw. So that's the next piece of this, is called Large-Scale Ground-Mounted Solar Photovoltaic Installation Overlay District.
Voltaic.
Voltaic.
Photovoltaic.
Doesn't matter, I don't know what either one of them means, so.
Clearly, I have no idea what that is.
It means you take good pictures.
It means I like nuclear power is what it means. So this was some language that we got from Bob, I believe, relative to the idea of putting forward a ground-mounted solar array that would be done in a way that would be least impactful to a residential area. So it has setbacks, it has requirements for being concealed to streets, and it really gives a property owner the option of doing this as a matter of right, provided they follow these rules.
Now, this is our current bylaw.
This is our
Yeah.
current bylaw. I attach this just for reference.
Yeah.
And so if we were gonna add anything in a residential
All right, so
zone,
did you put forward any language?
Well, just to get things going, you know, also, I'm not crazy about the as of right, even in industrial. I mean, I look at that facility on Crooked Lane, that's right up to the street, and if you look at yeah, you know, to me, there's only one negative for solar. I mean, you think about the effects on it. It doesn't make any noise. It doesn't generate any traffic at all. Doesn't smell.
Just looks
And it's the view
Yeah,
of
appearance.
it. It's the appearance of it.
So-
In ours,
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
So our existing bylaw says that my neighbor,
no, in industrial,
oh, I thought we were talking about
right?
residential.
No, it's only allowed in
No,
industrial.
We want to, so there's two pieces of it, and that's what Bob's bringing up.
Yeah.
One
Yeah.
is, do we want to continue to allow the industrial to remain the way it is? And separate of that is, do we want to have a residential bylaw that allows a solar array to be put in a residential area as a matter of right?
I got you.
Within certain parameters, you know, with those restrictions where you would,
So I think my opinion, if you're gonna have it in industrial. If, I wouldn't be in favor of a residential one because, you know, people buy their lots expecting to be in a neighborhood. All of a sudden, somebody's putting up a solar farm next to you.
Well, would you be in favor if you couldn't see it?
No, you can't tell me it doesn't detract from the property values. Because, you know, some people are gonna think twice about buying
Yeah.
a house next to a solar farm. I just don't think it belongs in residential. It's a business use. Somebody's making money off it. Why can't it be zoned industrial or business?
Yeah. Well, personally, I don't think it's a good use of our industrial. It's not really the type of industry we want in the, you know, in the industrial. We have a limited industrial district. But even there, I don't like the fact that it's allowed by right and with very little regulation. If you look at our bylaw, and let's talk about screening, because again, that's what it comes down to, screening. If you look at our bylaw, it mentions the word screening once. It's in 10.3.5.2, the required documents, a site plan showing screening. Okay, let me show you a bylaw that I found. I think it's Seekonk, I forgot. I did a few of these. Send one over to Zink too, if you would.
get one to read it too, she can put it in the
Yeah.
record if you got an extra one.
Yep, I do. Did I just give my, no, there it is. Look at that one. What I love about that one is the section that says the special permit granting authority may, at the applicant's expense, engage the services of a registered landscape architect in order to create a landscaping screening plan for said facility, which satisfies the bylaw. Basically, it allows the special permit granting authority to tell them what the screening is going to be. We don't have anything in ours. The screening go right up to the street like it is. I mean, I absolutely would not like to live next to the one that's on Crooked Lane. And is the opposite side of the street residential there?
is.
Yeah.
Is this for residential?
Well, no, this,
I know you
Many
brought it
t-
just to
yeah.
show the screening.
many towns have, they have, by right in industrial, with regulations,
Yeah.
by special permit
In
in residential. So, absolutely, if we're gonna consider it in residential, has to be special permit, because the special permit granting authority can say no on it.
Yeah, and I misspoke and said as a matter of right, but I think that I had a conversation
Yeah.
with Bob, and the intention was that the special permit granting authority would have purview
and
over
who would that be?
granting that.
Well,
We'd have to work it out. So there's two
likely
pieces
the ZBA.
that I'm hearing here. So the as-of-right siting, just from an explanation perspective, that was a requirement under the green communities. We had to provide as-of-right siting for renewable energy. So expedited, or as-of-right siting in expedited permitting just means you got to do it within 12 months. So it's not really as fast as one would
But
think.
do they require it be residential? Or?
No, they
No.
allow
So
the
we can
town.
restrict it to industrial.
Absolutely,
You could.
as we have.
Yeah.
I do agree with Bob in the area, the screening piece. It would be great if we could add that screening. Now, honestly, Middleborough G&E serves 90% of the town of Lakeville. Middleborough G&E is not taking any more solar. They don't need it. It's not, until they figure out how to store it, then just don't want it.
Yeah.
So, on some areas of the town where we do have Eversource, those would be the only places that we'd be looking at for this.
TMLP.
TMLP. And TMLP will also put a moratorium on it. They don't-
If it got too,
Because
Well,
TMLP is
their
still
rates
in.
are so low,
Yeah.
it doesn't make it feasible, does it?
Well, municipal utilities are allowed to say no. Investor-owned utilities have to buy into it. They need
Well,
a certain
at the
percentage.
rates that they charge.
Yeah,
they
exactly.
should.
So TMLP could put a moratorium on it, so we just have a small section of town with Eversource. I think that you could probably make provisions within a special permit in a residential zone that would make sense. It may be a 500-foot buffering, so you're not going to take a 70,000 square foot lot and say
Yeah.
you can't have it within 500 feet of your property line. You'd be looking at larger tracts of land.
Yeah, you shouldn't be able to, in residence, shouldn't be able to see it at
So are
all.
we talking about solar for one house?
No.
Or are we
No,
talking
solar-
about a
no.
solar farm?
Solar farm.
Yeah.
Solar
Yeah,
farm.
see, I wouldn't be in favor of that in
Yeah.
residential at all.
no, you're right. It's an electric factory. It's essentially bringing business
Right.
right into a neighborhood.
Right.
Their business is just to produce electricity and make money.
That would be my,
It's all about
no.
a profit. So
but I think that, bringing in screening, even in industrial area.
Yeah, well,
This would
if we
be-
do nothing, I think we should beef up the screening for industrial.
well, that
Right.
became evident this past year.
Yeah,
So
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that this language is great. It gives oversight, and it's at the sole discretion of the special permit granting authority. So what they say goes.
you see, they would require a second bond. We did.
yeah,
We did the decommissioning bond, and then you would have a landscaping
landscape
bond.
bond,
Yep.
which I saw that too, that's key.
I wonder how you'd come up with an amount.
But just so you know, we have no industrial land right now in
That-
anything other than Middleborough
Right.
G&E. So,
Right.
so I'm not so
I
sure.
gotcha, yeah.
So if we weren't entertaining a residential use, and I agree with John, but I also would look at the zoning. So currently, our zoning is all over the place, and
Yeah.
we have some large tracts of land that will never, ever be developed residentially, that are zoned residential.
But maybe that's where we need
Yeah,
to.
there
That's
is
what we
there
might
is a
have to
proposal for
concentrate.
the Freetown Street
Yeah.
property, which is kind of an ideal spot because it's tucked over in the corner. It's got
Yes.
140 and
You'd only see it from 140, but even maybe you'd see it from 140.
yeah, and so there is a company interested in that site, and
But and how is that zone now?
residential.
But there is talk about changing that to,
Well, I mean, they could.
I don't think we can change that because there's no surrounding properties that are zoned differently. You'd be zoning the one property to
You'd be-
industrial
you'd be
for the
spot
sole
zoning.
purpose of, solar. So it would either be provisions via special permit that were so stringent that you would never have a negative impact relative to your residential properties. Or you would incorporate that within another piece of the bylaw. So the particular property Bob's talking about, is going to be next on the agenda with an open space, type development. I think that we could incorporate a solar component to an open space development, allowing a certain amount of the protected open space land to be developed with solar.
Yeah.
Or
They've
something
done
to that, yeah,
in
they've done that.
Bridgewater,
Yep.
one of Muhammad Itani's projects
And it's
has that.
not a bad idea. So
Yeah.
if you're looking at it, if all of a sudden, and I think the planning board had this discussion last time we brought up open space, is if we had a developer that would be
Right.
willing to come in here and say, we're looking at this property, this is what's, a project that's worth doing for the town of Lakeville, we would create an open space bylaw that perhaps had a solar component
Right.
that would benefit all.
And it's tailored to one specific parcel.
Yeah.
And it's not spot zoning, because we're not changing the underlying zoning,
Exactly.
but we're tailoring the use of that particular, or we're tailoring the bylaw. Well, to say that it's for a particular parcel is not correct,
Yeah.
but it is. I mean, in the sense that there's only one parcel that fits the criteria of the
Yep.
restrictions.
Yep.
I mean, you
Right.
could make
Well,
a minimum
it-
100 acres.
It would not
Right.
be dissimilar than the mixed-use development district. When we went through
Right.
that process and council was involved, and
Yeah.
that was targeted for one parcel of land with mixed-use development, unlike any other area of the town of Lakeville, and it wasn't deemed non-unified zoning. So
Yeah.
that parcel's large enough to take something like this and say that's the only thing that'll work there. And it really
Right.
makes sense from a conservation,
Yeah.
open space perspective, all in. It's
Right.
not a bad idea.
And Nate, I think though, if you look at it, I think there's, that parcel of land is about
Yeah.
10 or
10
12
15,
parcels.
It is. It is.
individual, so it's not one parcel of
But zone
land.
residential.
Are you talking
Oh,
about
yeah.
the one on Freetown Street?
Yes, yeah.
Well, we actually received, they brought forward a set of plans that had, I thought, 10 homes on it.
They did. That was a conventional subdivision
Right.
off of County that backed into that piece along 140.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's not a parcel of land that lends itself to conventional subdivision. Just can't be done because of the wetlands and.
If you had a subdivision plan of 10 lots, why is that not?
It disappeared from,
Oh, they just backed out?
yeah, we only saw it the one time, as a,
Yeah, that.
It's still waiting,
Oh,
I think.
well, it just hasn't returned, right?
It hasn't returned yet.
Yeah, so.
But there was no, it didn't.
Yeah, I
No,
don't
yeah, we
think
never
it's
heard of
still-
it. It was merely just,
It just
yeah,
on the slow track.
right.
Yeah, I think it's off the track because there is a solar company that's got an option on this other property.
on a piece of residential.
The one I'm talking about, at Freetown Street.
Yeah.
So they put in an offer and contingent on it getting approved for this.
Yes, yeah.
So do we
Yeah.
want to talk a little bit about number 4 then, and see if we can weave these two together, if that's kind of the pleasure of this group? Because
Yeah,
I
that's a
think
good idea.
Nate's, or both of you guys have this concept of an open space, which is similar to a cluster zoning
It's-
idea, right?
Yep.
So a cluster zoning aspect that could incorporate the solar, which would allow for a solar piece really in a development that fits certain criteria, which, if we look at it practically speaking, would probably only be the Freetown Street. So that's really the idea, is creating some zoning that is specific for that huge parcel to be developed in a way that would be best suited for the needs of the town. So let's talk about the open space bylaw. I mean, I think generally speaking, the idea of this is that you have so many acres of land, you have so many acres within that parcel that are buildable, and an incentive to not have the 70,000 square foot minimum lot size. You allow a builder to build more densely within that parcel and then get relief on other aspects of the parcel.
Well, but I think that the purpose is to keep a bunch of open space.
Open space.
Yes,
So
but
that-
you
Is
don't.
a solar farm open space? That's my,
Well, we can talk about
Yeah.
that, right, then that's a good question. But, so the idea is that, like, so, for example, if you have a parcel that would allow 20 single-family homes on 70,000 acres, you can still build 20
Right.
homes, but
Not
they don't have
40.
to be on.
Exactly.
On smaller lots.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
You're limited to the total number,
But you can make
the
it more
density
dense.
can be increased for the sake of having more woods or whatever.
Yeah, Middleborough has a similar process. You have to go in first with a conventional subdivision to show how many lots you
By
could
right,
get.
How many you can get.
And if you can, Matt Falconeri's development on Marion Road is that way. Went in, showed we could get 24 lots, and then come back in and, I think they're on like 30,000 square feet, and that's 80,000 zoning out there. And it's actually a perfect site for it. The ideal cluster site is a rectangle, where you put the houses right in the middle, or right
Have
here,
a bunch of open space
and
around.
open spaces all around it. Now, there are some parcels of land that don't lend themselves to, because the open space is
In the back.
in the back.
That, don't you find that that's almost the case? That's what drives it a lot of times, is that it's
I don't know, I haven't, not
from
all
a
of
business,
this.
from like
Yeah.
the contractor's business point of
Yeah.
view, he
Lineal footage of
Yeah.
roadway
It's a shorter
development.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
overall
Yeah.
it's just a better deal for him.
But I think
Yeah.
it works both ways. I mean,
Yeah.
I absolutely, I'm in agreement. I think this is a great idea.
Yeah.
Open space. I don't think you need 70,000 square foot lots.
No.
I think a lot of people would prefer smaller lots.
Yeah, because really, I mean, it's less property to take care of.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we're in agreement with this being a good idea. So the particulars of it, we could maybe look to the Middleborough bylaw, right, for some guidance. But here's the $64,000 question: how do we integrate a solar component to that, or can it be done? Is solar open space?
It's not. I
No,
don't think
it's
so.
not. It's definitely a business.
Well, open space is whatever you define it to be.
Well, can you
what
can
would
you
the
walk
purpose
underneath it?
be?
Yeah.
You can't.
But what
you
would
know?
the purpose be of having a solar farm in a open space?
in a residential
Yeah, what
development.
Well,
would it
let's
be
be
the
realistic,
developer?
make more money.
So it would be the developer
Yeah.
making the money,
Oh, yeah.
not
Well, in
not
the
to
town-
provide power to this community.
Listen, solar
Yeah.
power is subsidized by the federal government,
And that's the only
okay?
way it's feasible.
It's not economically feasible. It's really, in my opinion, bad energy policy. But that's okay. I mean, I don't make energy policy, so I'm really certainly not an expert on it. But I think when you can sell it for 5 or 6 cents a kilowatt hour, and the person generating it is getting a subsidy of 15 or 20 cents a
Yeah.
kilowatt hour from the federal government,
Not tax money.
it's really it's corporate welfare.
I agree.
And there's no other way to
But
put. Well,
aside from that,
there's no other way I would put it.
but aside from that, how does that fit in an open space?
Well, but that's the question: the concept of it's, and I know your position. It's an energy factory. It is,
Yeah.
but it's passive. It's quiet. It's non-obtrusive.
Oh, it's the best of all factories, but
Yes.
in
Yeah.
relative
And it brings
It
good
is an
money.
industrial. It is an
Brings good
industrial.
money to the town.
You got to remember that.
There's a potential tax pilot program, and
Yeah.
so there's
Yeah.
there's an upside and a downside, and the question is, do we want to consider? To me, the big question is, I think that we could do a cluster zoning that made sense. Will the solar piece of it sink it, or do we do them separately?
See,
Right?
my opinion
and
is
I don't
don't
know.
open the door to solar and residential. Even if
And that's
even
fair.
if
No,
you're-
and we may not even get away from this table with the solar idea. So, but my point is that from a strategy standpoint, if we have a cluster zoning bylaw that we like, and we want to bring forward, do we focus on that separately from
absolutely.
the solar piece? Or maybe we should talk through the solar thing enough or more and see if.
I think the open space idea by itself is a no-brainer. I think people would love it.
Yep.
You throw in the commercial aspect. I'm sorry, the solar aspect
Yeah,
of
I
it,
mean-
and I see it as a detraction. I wouldn't be in favor of it, but that's just one.
It's an attraction to the developer to develop the site.
Right. It incentivizes the
Yeah.
developer.
Right.
I think the cluster zoning is a pretty good
Incentive.
is a very good incentive, and that would even be
Yeah.
like icing on the cake, you know,
Yeah.
icing
Right.
on the, you know.
Well, I've said all along, it's so that cluster is a no-brainer.
I mean, are we
You have to
concerned
have
with
it.
incentivizing developers?
We could be. I mean, that's a conversation worth having. I mean, I personally don't know.
I think
I don't have an
developable
opinion on
land
either
is
way.
gonna be developed.
It will. It will.
And cluster zoning can reduce expenses and make it a more
Attractive.
financially attractive project.
No. Right now,
Don't know that you
we
need solar for
we
that.
force a developer who wants to do it more intensively, we force him to do a 40B. It's the only other way you can
Right.
do it. I remember years ago when LeBaron was first contemplated, the developer figured he had two ways he could go. They could rezone the site or do a 40B. They thought the 40B would be faster. It wasn't. But they didn't really want to do a 40B necessarily. They wanted to do a more intensive, cluster type of zoning. But we didn't have a cluster bylaw. There'd been even no talk about it. That was 15 years ago, 12 years
Yeah.
ago. And forced them to do a 40B.
As it has many people.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm not saying anything wrong with that, but it's
And it's
another option.
provided some affordable housing, which is desperately needed in Lakeville. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I still think this open space is a great idea. I just
Right.
don't feel like the solar part of that is necessarily fits.
I know that unlike most of our other zoning changes where, we've presented them to say, I have a problem with enforcement. I certainly don't have a problem from a zoning perspective with either open space or solar. It's not something that comes up every day.
Right.
This is a little bit outside of what we've been doing when we've been solving problems
Yes.
throughout our bylaw.
No,
But
I
agree.
It's
But the
a
merit's
case
there
of
to
first
have the
impression.
conversation.
Yes.
And we know that an open space bylaw, the similarities between open space and solar is they're both conservation minded, right? Open space bylaw was conservation driven to create open space and habitat. Our solar, the whole idea behind solar is to reduce our carbon footprint. It's not really dollar and cents related. So we're not looking at it to say we can buy energy at 6.5 cents a kilowatt one way and it's going to cost us 26 if we do it with renewables. The idea is to reduce the carbon footprint, and there's probably a need for that.
No. We at the local level do not have any oversight or any policy decision relative to reducing a carbon footprint for development. I completely disagree. That's it. The very least, it's on the state level, if not on the federal level.
It's trickle
If you
down.
want to not have a cup made out of styrofoam, that's how you reduce your carbon footprint.
Well,
Now,
just
I
don't
see
burn
you
it
have
after.
a styrofoam cup, so
Bob's got paper. He's
exactly.
good.
So, but my point is that that is never considered, and I'm not like against the idea of reducing greenhouse gases and all that. I mean, I think that's not a local. That's not a local concern. The local concern is we determine how
I'm
we
not so
want.
sure I would agree with that.
And that's okay, but just let me finish this thought. We determine what we want the zoning to be, to allow land to be used in ways that we the town, believe is in the how
Yeah,
we
'cause-
want to see the
yeah.
town
Ultimately,
used.
it's gonna be the residents of Lakeville to make this decision.
So, I have not. I don't know as if the push for solar had. I think it had more to do with making money for the people that were pushing solar and less to do with reducing the carbon footprint. I think that was the excuse that was given from a policy perspective. And the reason why I think it was an excuse was because it's subsidized by the federal government. So it's a flim-flam.
But
If it
keep-
really had value, people would be doing it and it would be market driven and it would work, but it doesn't.
Keep in mind, we presented at town meeting 4 different criterion to become a stretch energy code community
I
and
get it, I
green
understand all
community.
that, but
And
that's
that
the
was
state level.
that was all based at a local level to become one of the first green
Well, no, but
communities in the
but-
area.
Of course, but that was to satisfy state requirements.
No, they didn't require it. It was option at a local level. And I
Yeah,
know
but you did it based on criteria that somebody gave you to qualify for the program.
to adopt it at local option. And the townspeople spoke and said, we are interested in reducing our usage.
Who are the townspeople?
Anybody that showed, the 105 people that showed
Right.
up at town meeting.
So let's
If we had
we'll do
known
this all
then what
night.
we
but-
know
Yeah.
now.
We can do this all night, and it's okay that we disagree on it. And
Yeah.
I don't think, I think what I would like to see, or this is my impression of this conversation. There could be value in adding the screening aspect to our solar, but the likelihood of that mattering is slim because of the present circumstances relative to how solar energy is being utilized by
It's a little too late.
municipal. Right. Do we want to do this anyway to have it, or do we just want to leave it be? Because the use of solar could change.
See, I think that if we're not gonna worry about it being in residentially zoned areas, who cares? It's a business. It's no worse or no better than having a big ugly building.
Yeah,
Office
except look at Crooked
Lane.
Lane, right across the street.
Because it's surrounded
is,
by residential
yeah,
property.
yeah.
It's not in,
well,
what you would
every
consider a-
industrial area is surrounded by residential at some point of
no,
it.
but if you put that solar farm in the middle of an industrial park, it doesn't look as bad as it does across the street from a
Yeah,
residential.
oh, no question about it.
Yeah. And what used to
Right.
be farmland, right?
Yeah.
But is there value in having this screening option?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah,
Do we
it,
want to
I think it
bring
would be
forward
easy
that?
to put it in.
Yeah.
that's a
Okay.
tool for that the planning board would utilize. I
Yeah.
think it might make sense to just maybe kick that to them and say, is this something that you're interested in us putting in for a tool for the planning board through site plan review?
Oh, right.
I think,
Think you ever thought?
I'd be happy to do it.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
because
think-
it gives you
Would be
more
happy to
options.
do
It would have
Yeah.
been very helpful, 12, 18 months ago,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, if we had more than 6 hours' notice on that particular project,
Yes.
it would have been helpful too.
That's
Touche.
that's the trend.
We're getting
A lot of other
the other
issues
side
there.
of the street now, coming out.
What?
The residential side, we're gonna be asked for the right of first refusal.
Oh,
That's
because
gonna be
it's
developed.
farm.
What are they trying to do there?
I believe, a subdivision.
Just standard
Solar view.
as of right? Solar view estates?
Solar view acres.
Sunny,
They Form 8 it. I know they Form 8 it, but.
They
Yep.
formed a,
Okay, so, all right, so let's do that then. I'll make a motion that we forward this language, that was presented. This was from, it doesn't matter, but you have a copy of this, Rita. This is the
Yep.
395 screening language to the planning board for consideration. Do we want to, are we adamant about this enough for them to do a hearing on it? I mean, I guess my
Well, they have
question
to
is,
anyway.
in
Well,
terms
what's the
of,
point of doing it if we're not?
Well, they have-
well, no, I mean, I think
Interested in pushing it.
if we send it to them to look at and get back to us, we lose time,
Right.
right? So if we send it to them for consideration for having a hearing, to have it be put forward for a town meeting, that's the ultimate goal. Are we ready to do that with the screening
I think so.
piece?
Yeah, I would be in favor
Okay.
of that.
and bonding. We wanna
It's
do
part of the,
bonding.
it's
Yes,
part
it's
of
part of the
the,
language.
the
Say that
language.
again? I can't hear.
Would like to write it.
In addition to what's written, or?
Did you get a copy of this?
Yeah, I gave him.
Oh yeah.
I gave
Well,
him.
if you read it, and if you can obviously modify it, Zink.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
That's the time to do it.
Yep.
But before it gets advertised,
Right.
Oh yes.
it should be written and voted.
Yes, because once you advertise it, then it's
Town council,
it's
too.
the way.
Yeah,
So-
no, we have to.
To get the process.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I like this language. Now, maybe there's things that can be revised in it, but I think that's what we want to do, right?
Do you have that, Zink? The second handout.
I gave this one.
Okay.
I
I'll
gave it to
second.
him. Yeah.
I'll second the
Okay.
motion.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so that really takes, in terms of 3, that's a piece of it. So,
Can we go back to open space?
yeah,
real quick?
no, now we're on that. We're
Okay.
back to 4, so.
So is there a way that we could let the town decide? Could we propose the open space bylaw and have them vote separately on the open space? And then adding solar to the open space? Is there
Well,
a possibility of doing that?
Has
so.
anybody
Yeah.
ever said that they want solar? Because we're kind of adding something in that
Yeah.
that perhaps no one's ever said. No developer yet. From a planning board, we're going developer led, and it's the
Yeah.
best way because if we write wording for the open space bylaw or change it or modify it, and a developer comes in with a great plan and we're a few words, well then we'd be like, hey, no problem, we'll do this in May or June. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they just be like, I don't want to wait.
Yeah.
I can take my money elsewhere. So if a developer came in and he's like, this is exactly what I want, can you do it? Then you would modify the law for him essentially.
I think that particular site that I mentioned, there's been talk of both cluster and solar. I don't think anybody's necessarily said both together, but
As far as sorry, I'm trying to visualize the site. This is the one along 140
yes,
cluster there.
yeah.
I hadn't heard that one yet. That would be new news, but I don't know. I don't doubt you.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Probably keep it away from the highway. Right?
More so the topography and of the land, not so much for the highway.
I actually
We
believe
have 3
they,
sets of.
they presented
cluster
that to the
zoning
planning
bylaws
board.
that are
Did they,
written below,
Yeah,
that we would be happy to pick from one of them, or print them out, or talk about.
I'm sorry,
or
3
something.
sets of what, Zane?
Cluster zoning.
Yeah,
Cluster zoning, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
We hired Serpent for a while to do one, and.
It's in that
they're
file.
fairly
To do a
well
bylaw?
written, but they're all different.
yeah.
Each one of them are different. You'd have to select from one, and you'd have to get a.
Or
you know,
take the
like
best
a
of
group
all
to
3.
Select from one.
Zink, have you guys had a hearing, or not a hearing, but an agenda item to dig into that at all as the planning board and come up with a consensus on one that you like better than the others?
Over the, what do you mean? Did you say?
Which cluster zoning bylaw does the planning board have a preference for? Have you guys had that
I never looked at
conversation?
it that way. Each one of them were spoken of favorably.
So
But
where
they were-
did we
they were
get
never
this by?
compared yet. If we actually need one in a hurry, we'd have to
Right.
compare one.
Sure.
But would rather not.
Serped
I mean,
compiled that.
So is this
At
one of
least
the ones?
One of them was
planning
really
board has?
exhaustively discussed.
Mm-hmm.
And the general concept is, yeah, everybody likes that sort of thing. It doesn't make none of them. If you added solar to it, it would be frankly hilarious. In the, I mean, it would be hard to do.
If you
But,
Yeah.
to
I mean,
get
you
back
can do
to
it with
Bob's
great
point, if you were to combine a project with solar and cluster zoning, would you take the total property, subtract what they're going to use for solar, and then what's remaining, is that what you'd be able to do your calculations with? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I
Because
know
then
what
you're
might be
Yeah,
something.
otherwise.
Then
they
you would
get-
have
they
3
get a
components.
bonus out of
yeah.
the land that they
Yeah.
wouldn't normally get.
Yeah.
right.
I get you.
And if the property was big enough, it would work.
It'd have to be big.
It would have to be ginormous,
Yeah.
and then you'd say, well, subtract all that solar,
Yeah.
and then what's left? There's my
Yeah.
12 lots,
Yeah.
and I'm going to put them all up front, and we still have all 3 things. We have true open space, a solar farm
Yeah.
of some sort, and the homes right up near the road where, and in that case, I'm not a road builder or anything, but I've heard like to put a road in there, like a real road in a subdivision, would be like expensive. It's like ground. It's like
We'll
pure
have to
granite.
annex Freetown, or East Freetown, to get enough land to pull that all out. So,
The biggest problem with that always happens with the open space concept is maintenance of the open space later. And if you had some solar and some open space mixed in, you'd be asking for a lot of problems. It would be better to separate.
Well, unless you
That
require,
issue.
unless you require the developer, if he gets approved for solar, to provide the maintenance,
You could have an O&M plan for that.
right? You could have a maintenance
So
plan.
you're
They
for the
would have
solar
to.
now?
Not necessarily, no, I.
It's just
I-
a solution finder.
I'm just
Yeah.
thinking, I'm thinking out loud, but, you know.
Yeah.
You, I'm on conservation, we can't keep track of the stuff we have, we can't take on more stuff.
Right.
To maintain and, so you'd have to have some kind of an alternative, and, I mean, if you're gonna let somebody make money off of it, make them maintain it.
The
Make them maintain whatever,
Don't they,
you know,
doesn't the
whatever the
homeowners
open
would
space,
association have to
hopefully try to
maintain
get
it?
somebody that was attached to the community and
right?
was, that, had some connection there. All of the solar people aren't, you don't really have that attachment.
Yeah.
Right,
Well,
in a
the
lot of
plus-
cases, they're leasing, aren't they?
The equipment?
Yeah. Or the equipment is owned by a lessee of the
Oh,
property?
yeah, but it would be the property owner, the one who
Yeah.
gets the permit,
Yeah.
would be the one who's responsible, not
Yep.
the lessee.
I think we're gonna move on from the idea that solar is gonna be a component of the cluster zoning. And I think the next question is, if there are 3 proposed bylaws that have been kicking around, do we wanna ask the planning board to maybe add this as an agenda item and talk about which one they like the best? I really would like them to decide which one fits within what they do.
Considering this one too, even, this is probably
one
one
of
of the
the
ones
three.
you have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Because, I mean, if
'Cause this was-
does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
makes perfect
this was
sense.
developed by
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
Serpent.
what I would do.
This one.
Or there's, and they get theirs from the state.
Okay.
And, I mean, there's a root to this tree.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that.
I don't
makes
think it makes a whole lot of sense for us to propose something totally out of whole cloth when they've been working on this concept.
Right.
And there's a few ideas on the table. So why don't, what we do is we just send a memo to the planning board asking them, or telling them we had this conversation, asking them to consider the options. And if they determine that there's one that they like, schedule a hearing for it to add it to the,
So this would be with the intention of getting on in the next,
yeah,
the next
yeah,
town
if
meeting.
they can do it, if they have time.
If there's time.
And if not, we look at it in the fall, but I think if,
I think that's.
Because I think this has been
fall.
kicking around a long
It's,
time, right?
it's a big job.
it is, but at least if we get it started.
You gotta start sometime.
Right.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah, and when the planning board looks at it, the Middleborough's got a decent bylaw, but the problems that they have had is well, it was especially with the old town planner, is that they pretty much made you engineer for a complete subdivision that you had no intention of building.
So the upfront costs were exorbitant.
And time.
Yeah.
It was taking twice as much time to do. Now, they changed it a bit, where you don't have to perk the 24 lots, but you perk in 3, certain areas. And so you just want to be careful when you look at that you don't make it so cumbersome that nobody's going to use it. Because for a while with the old town planner, people were saying it's not worth doing it. Now, Matt Falconeri did his, and he got it through a bit faster than normal, because they promised it was an ideal site for it, and that everybody that wanted it, and they were a little bit more flexible. But yes, you got to show what you can get more than just grid it out, and you can't put a grid with 175-foot frontage and say I can get 40 lots when it's half of it's wetlands. But still, you shouldn't have to spend an outrageous sum of money to design something you have no intention of building.
But those wetlands that you speak of is some of the perfect open space
Absolutely.
that you
Yeah.
want. So you don't want to necessarily be like wetlands that we don't want
Right.
that can't count.
It should be.
Yeah.
It should be counted to some
yeah.
degree.
Total square
I
footage.
can see you
Yeah.
not taking the entire thing if it's a swamp and
Right.
saying, yeah, you would never be able to put 8 houses in there.
Right.
So how can you do 8 up front, you know? But
Yeah, maybe there's a factor that unbuildable land is considered
50% of its
yeah,
50% of its value.
something. Yeah, just
Yeah.
some-
But you can, that's the point, you can change that number.
Oh.
up front.
Yep.
That factor you can change.
Okay.
You know that that the wetland isn't, is supposed to be not buildable, but it could be. You can grab 5% of it if you want. You
Right.
want 5? You want 8? I mean, it's that sort of a.
Yep. Yeah, you have some flexibility to negotiate with the developer
You should be
and
able
what
to
they're trying to
that.
do.
And the developers, they seem to be difficult about that, because if they start out with 40, for some reason, they think that they have to get to 40 from then on out.
Well, so this
Well, we
says,
just saw that.
And they won't back off.
this
Yeah.
says the maximum number of dwelling units allowed should be equal to the number of lots which could reasonably expected to be developed upon that parcel under a conventional plan in full conformance with all zoning, subdivision regulations, health, wetland regulations, other applicable.
Yeah, so
Because that would
That's
be-
more restrictive
Yeah.
than maybe you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, it actually, it allows the planning board to be as liberal or as restrictive as possible. But that's the theory of it, that, without spending a fortune, give us a reasonable expectation of how many lots you can get.
Okay, so that sounds like the game plan then. We'll do that. I guess I'll move that we send that notification to the planning board and ask them to kind of carry the torch on that whole idea. It's kind of a vague motion, but that's it.
no, I think it's a good idea. It's long overdue, and it seems like from as you start to see things come up that it's gonna be more and more of an issue, and needed.
Yep.
So.
Just out of curiosity, you have a motion on the table, right?
I do.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion?
I had one question. Is the town accepting any more public roads?
They are right now.
They are.
Yeah.
Okay. Because that would solve a problem with the maintenance, is if they were all homeowners associations.
You wouldn't. I don't think that they've been accepting. Like, just Middleborough accepting max? Are those cluster zones typically adopted roads, or are they homeowners
I
association?
think that's homeowners association. That's
Yeah.
got to stay. Can't remember for sure.
Yeah, I don't remember either.
But it's not it's not abnormal to have cluster subdivisions
With homeowners.
with homeowners. Yeah.
Is the maintenance a big thing? Because it seems to me like it's very subjective.
Yeah.
There's people who would be like, well, that's the open space. I'm never touching it ever again, and it just grows and grows and grows, and
That's probably the way it should
Well,
be.
that's. I mean, I
That's the way
know
it's designed.
you have to put a conservation restriction on it.
Yeah, but even conservation land has trails and things like that.
Right.
Yeah, you
Well,
can do
people
stuff
can
like
enjoy
that,
it.
but you shouldn't have to
Yeah.
go in and pick up deadfall.
Yeah.
Keep the trails clean
no,
or
that's
something
part
like
of
that.
just
Yeah.
wilderness,
Right.
or woods.
So I know, I think it's Stewart Road and Randall Road over in Rochester. They had a trail around the whole outside, and the
Yeah.
homeowners paid for that whole thing. They had a bridle path around the entire subdivision, which is quite large.
Yeah.
With these open space ideas, I mean, you cut a couple trails in and got a nice use
Yeah.
of property.
But with the one on Matt's, they don't have to do anything in the open space. They can put walking trails and very passive use, but the homeowners association would decide that. They would decide whether they want to spend some money and put some.
And then after several years, if they decide that it needs to be maintained, they would,
Yeah.
or not.
Or if you're going to put trails in, you're going to have to maintain them.
Yep.
But in many cases, the conservation restriction just keeps it untouched, basically.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.
Right, that motion carries. It's unanimous. So the next thing that we want to talk about here is the special permits for recreational marijuana. So Nate and I had talked about this a little bit, and I decided to add this with the idea of changing the special permit granting authority
Uh-oh.
from
Yes.
the existing planning board to somebody else. anybody else. No, I'm kidding.
Have you been watching
maybe
LakeCAM,
you can
have you?
talk a little bit about the thought behind that.
We talked a little bit about the process and how cumbersome the process is. And you know, I think the planning board did a good job getting through what I believe to be their first special permit. They struggled a little bit with, you know, the process out of the gate. But the planning board, at least from my opinion, is more a board that's looking at parking, drainage, the use of the property, kind of like the outside piece. I don't think it's fair for an applicant or our boards and commissions to just go over the same thing over and over again. And the example is the Board of Selectmen do the host community agreement, right? And they get everything presented to them. In the case of medical marijuana, then they go to the planning board for site plan review, and then they go to the ZBA for the special permit. So I just think that marijuana in general should be held by one entity and always be in conjunction with site plan review through the planning board, no matter what. So whether or not that be the Board of Selectmen be the special permit granting authority in conjunction with site plan review for medical or adult use through the planning board, or have the planning board do the special permit granting authority for all that's marijuana in conjunction with the host community agreement through the Board of Selectmen. The only other alternate is have the zoning board of appeals handle all the special permits, as they do all other special permits, but possibly exempt them from requiring site plan review as well. Because again, these situations, I mean, I don't know how many different boards and committees Nature's Remedy is presented in front of, but it seems like every meeting they're taking town time, whether it be the planning board or zoning board of appeals. And I kind of wanted to see us get away from that. It doesn't matter to me. I mean, it's not me that's spending the time, but it's just something that we had talked about and said, maybe there's a way we could bring everybody to the table and streamline it. Maybe there isn't.
Let's make the Board of Health responsible.
Well, the Board of Health's in here too, because all of these special permits are also in conjunction with them,
Right.
which I really don't think needs to even be mentioned, because they can't open unless the Board of Health's satisfied. We have a habit of duplicating language that is elsewhere in regulations that has no relevance in zoning. It's something that has to be done or they don't open.
Well-
But we relabel it as a condition within the
Well, you
special
got two
permit
different things.
process.
One is to build the place, and one is to operate the place.
Right.
Right? So the Board of Health obviously is gonna be responsible for the operation.
That's right.
Make sure it's up to hospital, whatever they do. So you wanna just restrict the building of the place to one board.
The use, so
Yeah.
it's the building itself is relative to the building code. So the only thing we're talking about with this is the use of a property. And I don't mind either way. I don't care if this stays just the way it is.
Yeah.
It doesn't really affect me. But what I've seen through this process is a lot of different rules and regulations, all with different language, all with different criteria. And an applicant comes in and just says, what do we do?
Yeah.
And I said, I don't know, you gotta talk to this one or this one, and,
Well,
you know, figure it out.
I'll let Zink talk, because I actually asked Zink to come because of this. I mean, we just spent the last 2 months on the planning board dealing with this exact thing. And we did start out at 0, and Kathy, our secretary, and
Fantastic job.
a great job, because we now we have a true checklist that you can hand to a. Now, I think we're only going to be handing them to, maybe I'm wrong, but another 3 people. Do you know what I mean? So if you were to say, hey, this could keep going on forever, I disagree. Do you know what I mean? I think it's going to be within the next 1 year, it's going to be full. But but that's beside the point. We did do a lot of work,
So
but
full in what regard? We don't have a limit on any of this, which is also a problem.
Is it within the purview of the Board of Selectmen to deny a license
It is.
based on saturation?
It is, but
But after a while, it'll be.
But let me put it this way, if it's found that decision is arbitrary and capricious, you're in trouble.
You're out, yeah.
And how do you determine if it was arbitrary and capricious when you have a Board of Selectmen, the current board, who has entertain the idea of entering into a host community agreement with any viable applicant going off of the state standards, because the state, that's another point we talked about. The state standards of this business is so highly regulated on the state level. Like, they have to jump through hoops that honestly should be policed by the state, in the sense that we don't have the municipal resources to enforce half of this stuff. So the question really becomes, what criteria did our board determine was reasonable to enter into an agreement? And if we say, well, we believe that there's too many, maybe that holds up in court, but maybe that's a test case for an arbitrary and capricious standard,
And there's nothing in the
and gets
state,
overturned.
there's nothing
'Cause
in the
it's-
state regulations about
No, it's
how
all,
many facilities in
no,
it.
it's all a case of first impression. There's no case law to go on. So I'm nervous about this, and I've said this in several selectmen's meetings, and we're actually having a meeting. When is that, on the 20th?
20th.
So what we're doing is we're having a meeting to invite the planning board, the zoning board, everybody, all the boards, to have this conversation. What do we want to do as a group, as a town, of these different boards, to determine what's a reasonable number? If we don't limit it, we may never be able to say no.
Right.
So we should limit it,
So how do we
in
do
my
that?
opinion. So if we're on board with that, what's a reasonable number? Well, do we want to limit cultivation? Well, that's a pretty low impact business, and we can actually generate a lot of revenue from that because of the host community agreements for cultivators that we've
But
negotiated.
I think we're naturally limited just by the zoning, right? Just by the amount of industrial property we have.
Well, yes and no, but
Unless
then
it
we could
becomes
zone some
unless
more.
it becomes so profitable that the remaining industrial
places all
park just
become
says,
marijuana
Yeah,
places.
we'll sell out.
"I'll sell."
Yeah.
They're
you know.
getting 4 to 5 times market rate rent to go marijuana versus regular market rate rent. So if you're a landlord, you absolutely want to rent to the marijuana places. It's crazy the money they're getting.
Yeah.
So
Why store T-shirts when you can, yeah.
yeah, it's really something else. So the question really is what aspects of that industry do we want to limit? For a couple reasons. One, if it's free market, are you really potentially damaging the market, right? Do you want to put a cap on it for recreational adult use?
Yeah.
Now, again, cultivation, I don't really see that being as a problem. Laboratory testing, I don't see any of those coming in, but hopefully they do. I mean, there's these ancillary businesses that I think are kind of on a different plane, so to speak. So that's one piece of this meeting we're going to have on the
Right.
20th. But I think a subset of that conversation from a zoning perspective is, how do we want to, is there an opportunity to streamline the process?
The permitting process.
And that's really all we're talking about
Right.
tonight, is some different concepts for that. And I don't necessarily know as if we'll come to a decision tonight on that, although we may. But that's one component of that bigger conversation, because
So-
the zoning piece has been cumbersome, I think, from a town resource perspective.
Right. Well, obviously, they,
And for the applicants.
so the way it works now, they approach the selectmen first to get a host agreement, right?
Yes.
Then once they get that, where does it go?
Provisionary license at the state,
Okay,
and then they go.
which we don't control.
No, and so they go through, security plans,
Yep.
appropriateness of site, all of those type of things.
But then it comes back to the town.
Yeah.
At what level?
So from a medical perspective, it goes to the planning board for site plan review, then the ZBA for the special permit.
Okay.
From an adult use perspective, it goes directly to the planning board for both special permit and site plan review built in.
Okay.
Except this time. Except this time it was
Yeah.
completely backwards.
Well, yeah.
What actually happened is they built the place first, and now you're in a very awkward position, and it makes it difficult at every step of the way when you've already built the place, and now when you have any sort of comment, but it's already done. And it's a
'Cause they did
reasonable
it-
way of doing it.
right.
Is it the best way of doing
So-
it? No, it's not the best, but it's a reasonable way of doing it, and a reasonable person might have done it that way.
Okay.
So it gets awfully awkward real quick this particular time with this particular group. Also, the group.
It's also our first.
Yes.
Well, no, but
It was
there's-
our first one,
there's-
and also this particular group was, I have to say, they were remarkably uncooperative
Oh.
and dense. They didn't. They're not good at doing paperwork.
But
They
but
don't
wait, there's,
believe it.
There's a piece
Yeah.
of data that's important for this. So the reason why they had started construction already was because they had gone through the medical process, right? So they were then coming back to get the special permit for the adult use, having complied
Oh, okay.
with the medical
So their
piece.
first intention was to do the medical.
To
Yes,
start with.
because at the
And then
time
they
that
had
was
the
the only
opportunity-
legal
Yeah.
thing they could
Right,
do.
Yeah,
Okay.
but that was
Yeah.
a nothing process, though.
So
This
why?
should be
Anybody
said,
could do
not
it.
to interrupt, but there should be something said that the planning board, when we first saw this facility for recreational, and it was even thought about recreational, we were like, parking's a disaster.
Yep.
It's not going to be good, and that with the company that's we're talking with has kicked the can down the road right past us the whole time. So
Okay,
they're like,
so the
they're
parking
like,
issues have not been addressed.
oh, not even in my opinion, not even close, because the numbers that you talk about going to a recreational facility,
Well, we see what happened when they opened.
Well, yeah, but that's an isolated incident of the first two that ever opened. I mean, I'm not saying that there won't be
right.
legitimate
You
traffic.
can't. No one can tell. No
But,
one.
but
So
if
it
you
does-
if you look at the traffic, for example, in the place in Fall River, it's way less volume, or I should say, it's way less concentrated than it was in those other places. The volume may be pretty high, but I think that they have a way that they schedule when you can go.
Oh.
So
Oh,
you
so-
basically you text them and they
Well,
send you a time, so you come within a certain window, so they
Yeah.
control the flow.
And
of
did
the,
they do that from day one?
Yes.
They arranged that ahead of
Yeah,
time
they have a
before they
system
opened.
that
So what-
mitigates.
They will
the-
still do
the
that
flow.
with us. They
yeah,
still
I
have
can.
to come back. And
I
do
think we
it.
can both speak for Brian, and that's his intention. Is that will be
Yeah.
the way
So
here.
there are
It
ways
has
for us
be.
to mitigate that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, but in your guys' defense is that if traffic wasn't considered on the medical piece, and then the applicant thinks, oh well, we already did this, it's the same, we're just going to be selling recreational.
No, you could pull up records. You could pull up the exact records on camera where we said, and we asked how many medical patients will be coming in here, and they had exact numbers. Here's how many people will
Right.
come for medical. Okay, well, what about the recreational? Well, we'll deal with that later, or we won't deal with it at all.
I agree,
you
but
know?
my point is that they believe that because they'd already done the special permit, that this was kind of an afterthought,
I get you.
think. And so when you guys held them to a higher standard, because there's a bigger volume of people that they'll be dealing with,
Well,
it
it
was
wasn't a higher
problematic.
standard. It was just more cars.
Well, right, I mean,
So-
just a different standard.
So to
It's
get back
since
to
the
your
business is
issue
different.
with the way it's permitted is essentially is what the problem is.
Yeah,
Right?
and it's not an issue that I have to face. It's just something that throughout this process, we've simply, I've talked to Aaron about it, and I've heard complaints through the applicant, not about any board specific. Just about the process.
But why-
I would have
being
imagined there would have been complaints about me.
So,
No,
No way.
no, that's other
not
people.
you.
So why is medical permitted differently than
It's completely different.
So let me ask
Two
Jake
different-
if he would have any.
At the state level, it's done by 2 different.
Yeah,
one's
now
cannabis
the medical
control,
is
the
being
other's-
incorporated into the recreational thing, but we don't even know what that's going to
So
look
why
like.
can't we just streamline and make it all the same?
It should be.
Or is
We
that-
actually have the
It's a law.
opinion from
Cannabis
council
control.
saying that it should be the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is kind of confusing because, council did write the adult use marijuana piece. So just so everybody knows, there's no retail component right now permitted for adult use. So what just happened at Kenneth Welch, and to be fair with 310 Kenneth Welch, Nature's Remedy, is that they came forward with a medical use only, retail and manufacturing in cultivation.
Yeah.
The site plan went to the planning board and was approved, and then went to the ZBA and got their special permit.
permit.
Right now, what has just been presented to the planning board was cultivation only, no adult use retail.
Oh, okay.
So they were converting a portion, or maybe even up to all of the canopy from a cultivation
From
perspective,
medical to cultivation for recreation.
which is the exact same number of plants,
Right,
which,
so
no,
what does that
no
matter?
change in traffic.
Okay.
You know, so they did get their special permit for that, but to Peter's point,
There's a
you
hanging,
guys-
element here that they're not addressing, and there could be
What's the retail?
There's a retail person on the line
Coming up.
and they're not.
Because they bifurcated the business and
It's all sliced out in their plan. I mean, it's
So I
retail
understand the
operation for a different
problems
company.
with, our problems with the way this is all gonna happen.
right.
But as far as what we're talking about tonight, it's just trying to streamline the permitting for
Yeah.
both medical and to try to get it all to work the same.
Right.
or
Now-
at least
now maybe we're-
identify who's doing what.
And maybe
Right.
we're, maybe, this is a great conversation, but maybe we're premature in that we want to have that meeting on the 20th.
After the,
Right, and we
Yeah.
want to meet and talk about
because maybe you can
everybody's
hash that out
perspective.
at that
Because,
meeting.
because the lawyers are both gonna, both of the lawyers for
Right.
the town are gonna be there.
And all the boards that are currently involved
Right.
in,
Mitzi
The
wants the
permanent.
first meeting just with the Board of Selectmen.
What do you mean?
The 20th is just with the Board of Selectmen.
The lawyers aren't coming that night?
That night, the lawyers and the Board of Selectmen. And then she wants to schedule it with all the other boards.
Oh, I see, okay. So I think the thinking behind that is that that statewide stuff, so the medical
Right.
got incorporated into the
Yep.
CCC, so they're gonna have the purview of that. And we have these two bylaws that may or may not be in conflict, right? We don't know. We need town council to tell us, how do we integrate these?
right.
So step one is town council explaining to us what the problems are with our bylaw. Can we integrate them? Can we make it consistent where the process is the same for a medical and a recreational? So they go, maybe it stays exactly the way it is, but if you're gonna do a medical, you get your site plan review and maybe your special permit granting authority is the planning board. It's all the same. So when you,
I'd like to go with not
well,
to
however,
interrupt.
wherever it goes, right, but we don't,
Yeah.
we don't need to decide, but for the
Right.
sake of an example, it goes through one process and you say, if you decide you're gonna go recreational, you have it. It's one comprehensive review
Right.
for the whole thing. The standard is the same.
Right, and I think that would be
Yeah.
more streamlined. But we can't really do that tonight.
No.
No.
This was
to
just a
bring up the-
startup
the
conversation.
conversation and-
If you were to have a facility, which we currently have one that's starting that process, that's gonna do medical and adult use,
Yeah,
they have to do two distinctly different processes and meet two distinctly different criteria.
yeah,
All as we're saying, you get a facility come in here and say we're doing medical and recreational, go to just the planning board.
Right.
It
Why
doesn't
can't
matter
it-
to
why
me,
can't
but
it
you should
just
go
be-
to, you should go
Right.
to one
Why
person.
can't it just be?
I can
streamlined?
only speak from myself. One of five, and myself would be that we go back to the planning board being the special, not the special permit
Site
granting
plan
authority.
review.
Site plan review only. It's what we do a lot more of. It's
Yep.
what we're comfortable with. The ZBA handle the special permit. I would never speak for Zink or Brian or
Sure.
Barbara.
But then everybody would know what they needed to do.
Yeah.
The
No,
same
but I
time
think-
on
I
everything.
think keeping it consistent is the key.
Right.
The only downside to changing it is that we just spent 2 months working it out. We would have to hand it all over to the ZBA. Where they're very wise people, so they would get it right
That's what
away.
they do.
Yeah. So
For instance, at the very beginning of the special permit process, the first question that came up on when we're doing we have
Yes,
to
this
do
is
their,
true.
the different things that are going on, is okay, we have to make a determination. One of our determinations that we have to vote is, the use is not noxious, harmful, or hazardous, is socially and economically desirable, and will meet an existing or potential need. How with a straight face can you read that even?
Well, how can you not? I mean,
Well, no,
I'm sure there's plenty of people that need their plot.
is socially and economically desirable.
well, it is though. I mean, the voters.
You're
of
gonna make
Massachusetts-
they voted in this town
Yeah, I
that
mean,
it's
look,
that
At any rate,
It's all
I'm
in your
not saying,
perspective.
Right.
no, you shouldn't say that this is not true. But this
Right.
just doesn't belong
It-
as
I
one of the
agree.
things.
But
You
that
just
shouldn't be
get
a
rid of it and
criteria.
don't vote.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's,
Yeah.
But that's for all special permits. Those
but this is
that
completely
criteria-
different than the other special permits that we do are for a garage being 15 feet off of off of a setback or something.
The only way it could be
Has
noxious
nothing
is
to do with.
if the plant burns down.
I only read the first one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It
No,
gets
but that's
worse.
a great example.
It gets worse
It
as
just
you go.
doesn't-
It
yeah.
simply doesn't fit in
that
the
particular-
process. It doesn't belong anywhere in here. We shouldn't be saying yes
I-
or no to that question.
But
I
if
think
it's
it's
in there and
more-
you don't answer it, it opens up the decision to be
Yeah.
challenged.
Right.
That is something that the
Right.
ZBA beats up on more than we ever do. Those very vague questions. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and
Uh,
the other thing was this particular group of people. We have a paper record of everybody that we come in contact with, and with the planning board, it's real important that it's a paper record because that's all we do is paper. We don't have any verbal anything, so we don't have any. This group, this Nature's Remedy, just didn't want to write things down. They never asked us a question. Like if they wanted to know how to do the next thing, they would ask somebody here. Never thinking that if you write a letter to us, we have to answer it
That's a good
somehow.
point.
They were the ones that became terribly informal, and the informality, of course, cost them.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's kind of
Yeah.
outside of the
Yeah.
scope of a
That's
zoning thing, but
yeah,
from a
that's
practical
a different point.
perspective,
But
But
that's
moving
caused a
forward to
lot
the
of-
next possible 4
That's a
or
lot of
3,
irritation.
I don't know how many, to 8. But we would definitely, it would be streamlined for the next group already
Yep.
because this group waited for a checklist. So the checklist was created and then they moved on. So that's ready to be handed to, and I believe already has been handed to the next group. I don't know the name. The special permit checklist. I think I think it's already been distributed to the next group.
For the retail?
For recreational growing.
For the second permit,
You're right.
the second people that are.
I'm not putting you on the
Oh,
spot. I
Monroe
just
Brothers?
I haven't handed it.
The Monroe Brothers?
But they're retail.
Those are the guys that are doing the retail at the Nature's Remedy location.
nope. The one that's across the street and down the corner from them, the second building, the second
Vital Med building?
Vital Med. Yeah,
That's Tricom.
That's the one.
But
Yeah.
They're just medical, right?
I could, like I said, I could be wrong. I
You're
thought
just
that same checklist has already been handed
What's
to
gonna
somebody
happen
else.
now?
Well, you know
what
what's
happens
coming.
now with the state.
If they're medical,
as they
you know it's
put
the
everything
recreational
together
use is
into the
coming.
Cannabis
Maybe,
Control
yeah.
Commission.
They'd be crazy not to,
They're going to wind
right?
up having
So much
because
more
they haven't
business.
been
Is that
permitted
it?
by anybody,
Is that are they growing their own too?
Yeah, they're all grown.
Yeah.
but they haven't been permitted.
Yeah, nobody's
By
going
anyone.
now.
No.
But-
So they have
but
a special permit from the ZBA for the medical and.
For the medical,
Sa-
it's a very limited.
And we did the site plan there. Yeah.
Yep, I remember.
Yeah.
All right, so.
do you need a
that's just-
motion? To
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think this is a multi-headed monster.
Yeah.
I just kind of wanted to bring it up, and I think we all kind of understand what the issues are. It's a matter of trying to work through it and see if we can try to improve on it. And I guess the takeaway from this is that there'll be subsequent meetings where a lot more people will be involved in this conversation to try to find some common ground and try to tighten things up.
Then that should be one of the criteria, is maybe streamlining this permit.
Yeah, and I
process.
think another ancillary benefit of doing that is again, however you feel about it personally, the proposed ban on recreational marijuana sales failed, and the town is moving forward with these businesses for the sake of generating revenue,
Right.
and we really need to be efficient at doing that for the sake of getting the money.
Right.
If these places are delayed in opening or never open because we don't have a good system for them to go through to get to that point, it really hurts us from a revenue perspective. Whether we like it or not, marijuana or cannabis is in capital IS is economic development in Lakeville
Right.
right now. There's no other businesses coming in. There's really nothing else going on, more or less statewide, that's new.
Certainly
or-
nothing that's gonna generate the revenue that will.
No. There's a huge potential revenue source here. And again, depending on market fluctuations or whatnot with all of that, how big the market gets, spike in prices followed by crash, as it's happened in every other state that's done this.
Right.
We don't know. We don't know where it's going to land, but I really think we have a duty to try to implement this as best we can for the sake of obtaining that goal.
I think, Aaron, too, just one other quick thing, not to beat this to death, but we got to remember that special permits for marijuana use are dissimilar than all other special permits. There is special permits for marijuana, whether it be an RMD, a medical facility, or an adult use facility, they're issued to the owner-operator. They're non-transferable. Okay, so what ends up, what that means for us, and same thing with any modification. So any modification to that facility requires a new special permit. Any change in owner-operator requires a secondary special permit. We need to probably, while we're working on this, think to ourselves, if we have a change in owner-operator, are they going to do this whole thing again? Are they, if we're dealing with 40,000 square feet of canopy, are they going to have to represent site plan review to the planning board, this whole thing, or are we going to make a streamlined approach to say, if you have an existing use and you change your owner operator, you're going to go directly to the planning board or whatever special permit granting authority there is, and you don't have to to the other
It would
stuff.
just be a transfer of permit, really.
But it isn't,
If the
though.
facility's
but it
already
is,
there.
yeah, it should be, but it
That's a
isn't.
state, that's a
the
state
state-
thing, we can't change.
Yeah.
But
issue it.
it's good in the sense
can
that it
streamline
gives the town an opportunity to get in and deal with issues that may be existing within the facility or the business.
Should the ownership change?
Yes.
That's your chance. Other than at the
Or
renewal of their
If they wanna modify it,
application,
right?
right?
Yep.
Or
If they wanna
modification.
enlarge it, or,
They have to sign up for each 10,000 square foot increment.
Is a tier?
Changes their tiers.
so you
Yep.
would have an opportunity then to
This latest one that's done is a tier 9, so that's 100,000.
Yeah, now it is, they changed
square
it.
feet.
Yeah.
Which is amazing because they do this,
100,000
they
plants.
apply to the state for this tier, but they only have 40,000 feet of room for canopy within the building. But they apply for a higher tier.
So that they could add on.
They could
in the
add on.
future. So, but we would have an opportunity to, at a modification like that, to weigh in.
This to me, and I don't want to get way off subject, but this is the state throwing the town a bone. They go through every single thing with these marijuana facilities with the highest level of scrutiny. And the only thing they really don't address is the site plan. And that's why, when we talk about site plan review, the planning board needs to be involved. They're the ones that do it all the time.
Right.
And they're looking at drainage and lot coverage and site lighting and signage.
So really,
That-
if you're looking at a site plan that's only built for 40,000 square feet, they have the capacity for 100,000.
Yeah, it needs to be addressed.
Do you take that into a consideration?
Well, I don't think there's any building onto that building. I could be wrong.
No,
but
there's C-trades.
Isn't there tiering? Isn't there tiering of the plants?
They
Take-
also do that, yeah.
Yeah, they tier the plant growing
Oh,
trays,
okay.
and doesn't that give them
Three
the?
levels.
Capacity.
Yeah, it was.
That increases capacity.
Or do they truly need
They
more?
applied for 40,000 square feet of canopy, what they called.
Which is a roof.
Yeah. Which,
Oh, that's a roof over.
Oh, when they talk about canopy, they're talking
canopy
about
is
leaf
plants.
canopy.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not skilled.
Yeah, no, neither.
Right, you
I'm
gotta
learning
use
all
the-
kinds of
Get with the
stuff.
verbiage.
They offered to be on the
You know what
testing.
sour
of
diesel is?
Having a
But I mean, this is a good conversation. I mean, it'll never be decided here. It's
Right.
a lot.
But I
more
think from
discussion.
our perspective, it's this idea of there's this zoning process that maybe can be improved on, and
Absolutely.
that's it. So,
Like so many things, and sorry to interrupt, but like so many things, now this is reactionary, and I wish we had this conversation 7 months ago or 9 months ago, but you didn't know.
We didn't
Nobody,
know.
nobody
and,
knew.
And the other thing you don't know is when a company is poised to make that jump, and then all of a sudden it becomes like this financial. Hey, if I don't get this thing done, permitted in 2 weeks, I've lost my. It's like
Yeah,
whoa,
the
whoa.
opportunity to do X, Y, and
I
Z.
never even saw you before,
Right. No, we kind of got that with one of the applicants. They were like, well, we need an answer. Well, I shouldn't say that. They came in and Mitzi said, well, I need to check to see whether I have a conflict, so I'm going to recuse myself. And I said, well, listen, I'm not willing to have this conversation without Mitzi. She's the expert on this industry. I mean, she's a bona fide expert professionally in this industry. I certainly want to know her opinion relative to whether we want to do business with a certain group of or certain
Then
business.
you'd be down to 2 selectmen, correct? And then
Yes.
you could potentially shut this thing down with just
Right. So, but to have somebody who knows this business, as
It's
crazy as
huge.
this business is, knows this business as well as she does,
Right.
not weigh in on whether this would be a good fit for the town. Just to me, I'm okay waiting 2 weeks.
Right.
Or waiting a week for her to
Right.
fill out the paperwork and disclose a potential conflict and have the meeting. And they were like, well, we really need to get this done. And I'm like, well, you're going to have to wait. Like, I'm sorry if this is a problem, but we have to protect our ability to have a reasonable decision made.
Right.
And to have somebody that focuses on that not weigh in, to me, was not
silly.
acceptable.
It's almost
the rush is a tactic that I've seen from
But it
the
is,
planning
it is.
board, and it's
Because
Every
because
single time we
the
do
whole
it,
idea is this.
we
for anything.
But I think the whole idea is this. It's
every
like,
single time.
well, we have a lot of other towns we could be doing this with.
Good.
Okay, good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck. Like, I'm not going to be intimidated or pushed around or rushed because you thought you deserved an answer when we talked for 10 minutes. Like, it's okay to put the brakes on.
Right.
And in this case, it was okay because, like I said, we have somebody that has that knowledge base. We don't want to not have that be part of the process. So, all right. That's, again, a forthcoming conversation. And
So-
it was good.
Aaron, and maybe it's not appropriate, but outside of the agenda, I did put the site plan review in the package. We talked about a couple of small things. I've had conversation with Zink about this. Was a notice of intent through conservation precludes an applicant from requiring site plan review, and that makes very little sense to me. I don't know, Zink, if you...
I thought it was a typo when I first read it.
It's,
And it got me
No,
into an
Nate
argument.
and I have
Yeah.
talked about
Last
this
3
before
years.
too. It's
Yeah.
that I think is an easy.
It's an easy fix.
Easy one.
I'm wondering if that's something under old business. I mean, we've discussed this multiple times. I did attach it to the package.
Yep.
This is a two-piece component, one of which is it calls out 3,000 square feet. This was mandated through the MS4 permit. The MS4 permit required site plan review on anything over an acre. So, I would personally like to see that number of 3,000 go to at least 30,000, and I think that might have been, I think that, I don't-
I think that was just
I
a
think
typo.
that was what it was meant. I mean,
Yep.
it's a little bit more stringent than the state requirement of 43,560. The 3,000's ridiculous.
Right.
If I had my way, it would be the 43,560, mirror the state, we don't have to worry about it. And then take out the notice of intent language with Lakeville Conservation Commission, which, to me, the planning board should be doing site plan review. The Conservation Commission, I think this was a collaborative effort between the conservation agent at the time and a previous building commissioner.
Always yank it then. They're not here.
Exactly. I mean,
Does anybody have an opinion relative to going to 30,000 versus the 43.5?
I would defer to the planning board on that.
Yeah, I mean that's
Well,
what
it makes
yeah.
total sense. I mean, every single property well over 3,000 square feet gets disturbed.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes,
they,
yes.
do, they do 3,000
Yeah, we
feet
would
by
have
the
to
time
do-
they
Would
get
you
to the
rather see
house.
30,000 or 43.5 as a threshold?
I think the exact acre is a state. There's a
Is a
state.
state.
to that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
go to the state
I would
limit.
use a state.
We could
Okay.
become more stringent, but I think, I would agree with.
I don't see any
I
point
would-
in going
Because
beyond
would
that-
agree
that's a
with
very
that.
soft measurement anyway. That's done by eye
Yeah.
by Nate.
Yep.
And if
Yeah,
there was any
very
issue, I
important
would
to
be
use a ruler.
sending it to planning board anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you were in that area, I think that's a really good change, a meaningful change in the bylaw.
Okay, so this would be,
Yeah.
do you just want to pose that as a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion under 6.7.3, procedures for residential site plan review, to change 3,000 square foot requirement to 43,560 square feet, which is 1 acre. I mean, we could just put 1 acre, but I believe the number's 43,560. And also take out the portion of which that says, for which filing of notice of intent with Lakeville Conservation Commission is not required. So it'll just be eliminate that language. It'll read, applicants for a building permit for new construction or for the modification of or addition to any residential structure which will disturb more than 43,560 square feet of ground,
Shall submit.
shall submit 3 copies of the site plan review as described herein, and the rest of it.
I'll second that. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Rita, did you get all that language?
I'm gonna get it from there.
Yeah, I can
I have most of it.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right,
easy.
And just who seconded it?
I did. All right, that was a good finding. Thanks for bringing that up.
Long overdue, I think,
Yeah.
from our side too. You know, it's
Yeah.
it's just being pushed through. So you might as well clean it up so everybody's legal. You know.
Yep. All right, so do we want to schedule the next meeting?
Yes.
What are you thinking?
When's the
Month?
annual meeting? Not till
I don't have any problem meeting once a month.
Okay. So, so Rita, that last one we did, we're gonna move that forward for the sake of
Right.
the same process. So yeah, do we want to do the first, what is that, first Thursday in April? Does that work? Is this the first
It works for me.
Thursday in March?
Yep.
Yeah, that's fine.
I know if we do
So
that,
that would
we're
be April 4th.
automatically precluding Bob Palucci's attendance.
Does it make it Wednesday, the 3rd?
What are your days off?
Oh, I can make. I have time for these. Yeah.
Okay.
Planning board tends to go till 10:30, 11:15, so we can't change it from Thursdays. But this, we're out early enough. I can always make these. So if you do make it a Wednesday, that's fine. This actually.
Wednesday's fine. Wednesday is my preferred day, but
Fine.
All right, so if we do that, Bob can come. Wednesday the 3rd? April
Bob
3rd?
can come.
Police station.
that means he will come.
That night.
What's that?
So you'd
The
have
first
to-
Wednesday's the
Oh,
police
right.
station, so
Oh.
it could be the second
Do the
Wednesday.
second Wednesday.
So that would be the
10th?
April 10th.
All right,
at 7, right? Here?
Yep, yeah.
It's always here.
yeah. Well,
It's a nice spot
the
to.
new police station won't be open April 10th, so
When's that going to
Are
open?
they gonna let us in
June
there?
4th.
Nice.
We're taking bets on that.
What?
Nothing.
Substantial completion, June 4th.
Oh, so not,
They'll hold their
not
feet to the
occupancy.
fire. No.
We
Move
can
to
have,
adjourn?
yes.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thanks,
Zink,
everyone.
thank you for coming
Yeah,
tonight.
thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks.